Johnathan Willette was, to most who knew him, an ordinary man leading an ordinary life. A 34-year-old accountant, he lived alone in a modest house on the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood. To colleagues, he was diligent, methodical, and dependable. To neighbors, he was polite and unobtrusive, the kind of man who waved when passing by, but rarely engaged in idle conversation. Yet beneath this calm exterior, Johnathan's life was far from simple. Those closest to him would later admit that he carried a restlessness they never fully understood, a tension he carefully concealed behind smiles and casual small talk. In the months leading up to his disappearance, subtle changes began to emerge. Friends noticed that he was more withdrawn than usual, canceling plans at the last minute, skipping social gatherings, and retreating into long periods of solitude. He spent hours locked in his home, often staring blankly at his computer screen, his once lively social media accounts falling silent. Even the people who thought they knew him well began to sense that something was amiss. He just wasn't himself, one friend would later recall. It was like he was carrying a burden he couldn't share. Then came that cold January morning when Johnathan failed to appear at work. At first, his absence was shrugged off as a minor inconvenience. Perhaps he was sick, or maybe he had a personal emergency. But as the hours passed with no word from him, concerns started to mount. His colleagues tried calling his phone repeatedly. No answer. Emails went unanswered. Texts remained unread. Even the company's HR department began to worry, noting that Johnathan had never been absent without explanation in his entire career. By the end of the day, Jonathan's family had begun to feel a gnawing fear. They knew something was wrong. His parents, who had always maintained a close relationship with him, found it unusual that he hadn't reached out even once. The worry intensified overnight, and by the following morning, the decision was made. They had to involve the authorities. A missing person report was filed, and the search for Johnathan Willette officially began. The police arrived swiftly, initiating what would become a painstaking and methodical investigation. Officers scoured the neighborhood, speaking to neighbors, checking surveillance cameras, and tracking Jonathan's known routines. They spoke to coworkers, asking if anyone had seen him the previous day, anyone who might have noticed unusual behavior or possible threats. They examined his phone records, digital footprints, and banking activity, searching for the faintest clue of where he might have gone. Yet, despite all their efforts, Johnathan seemed to have vanished into thin air. As the investigation unfolded, a troubling pattern emerged. There were no signs of a struggle in his home. Nothing appeared stolen. His car remained parked outside, untouched. His personal belongings were undisturbed, as if he had left in a hurry, or worse, as if he had never intended to return. Friends and family were left grasping for answers. Was it possible he had simply chosen to disappear? Or was there something far more sinister at work? The community, too, began to feel the weight of unease. Whispers circulated about a man who seemed so ordinary, yet carried hidden burdens. Speculation ran rampant. Was he involved with the wrong people? Did he owe money? Or had he become the target of someone's vendetta? Every unanswered question added another layer of fear and intrigue, fueling a sense of impending revelation that no one could yet see. Amid the uncertainty, investigators dug deeper into Jonathan's life, discovering inconsistencies and small anomalies that hinted at secrets he had carefully hidden. Emails he had deleted, sudden changes in his financial statements, fleeting encounters with strangers, each piece added to the puzzle, painting a picture of a man whose life was far more complicated than it appeared. Friends who thought they knew him intimately began to wonder how little they actually understood, and the sense of dread grew. If Johnathan could disappear like this, what other truths had been hidden from view? By the end of the first week, the mystery of Johnathan Willette's disappearance had captivated the entire town. The case had moved beyond a simple missing person investigation. It became a story of uncertainty, fear, and mounting suspicion. Every unanswered call, every empty street, every silent moment in his home spoke to a growing, chilling possibility. Something terrible had happened, something that would soon shock everyone who thought they knew Johnathan Willette. Little did anyone know, the first chapter of this harrowing story, the mysterious disappearance of a seemingly ordinary man, was only the beginning. What was about to be uncovered would reveal a secret life so complex, so hidden, that it would shatter the lives of those around him and forever change the way the community viewed the man they thought they knew. Days passed after Johnathan Willette's disappearance, and the growing tension in the community reached a breaking point. Families whispered over backyard fences, coworkers speculated nervously in office corridors, and neighbors glanced over their shoulders as if the shadows themselves were watching. Every lead seemed dead-end, every clue vanished into nothing. Then, on a cold, gray morning, the nightmare that everyone had feared became reality. The discovery came from an unlikely source. A jogger running along a secluded trail near the edge of town stumbled upon something that would forever haunt the memory of the town. At first, it seemed like an abandoned bag left carelessly among the underbrush, but as the jogger drew closer, the horrifying truth became unmistakable. The bag was attached to a body. The body of Johnathan Willette, hidden from view yet brutally exposed to the elements, lay there as if waiting to tell a story that no one could ignore. Emergency responders arrived quickly, their faces grim and voices hushed. Crime scene tapes soon cordoned off the area, while detectives moved methodically, taking photographs, collecting evidence, and carefully cataloging every detail. The scene was gruesome, a chilling display of violence that left even seasoned officers momentarily speechless. The body bore signs of struggle, and subtle but disturbing details suggested this was not a crime of passion. It was calculated, deliberate, and terrifyingly cold.
News of the discovery spread like wildfire. Neighbors who had previously only whispered about Johnathan now found themselves unable to turn away from the horror. Television crews arrived, flashing lights illuminating the quiet streets, while online forums buzzed with speculation. How could something like this happen here? People asked. Who could do such a thing? The answers were not yet known, but the questions alone cast a long, dark shadow over the town. Investigators combed through the scene, looking for every shred of evidence. Clothing fibers, fingerprints, footprints in the mud, and traces of DNA were meticulously gathered. Even the surrounding environment, the brush, the nearby creek, the discarded items along the trail was analyzed for anything that could lead them to the perpetrator. Each piece of evidence, no matter how small, had the potential to unravel the carefully hidden story of Johnathan's final hours. As the investigation unfolded, grim revelations began to surface. The condition of the body suggested a violent struggle, a desperate attempt to escape that ultimately failed. Clues indicated that Johnathan had not been killed at the site where he was found. He had been transported there, perhaps in an effort to hide the crime. The realization sent shockwaves through the community. The man they thought they knew, the neighbor they greeted with a friendly nod, had been violently taken from them in a way that suggested more than mere misfortune. It suggested intent, malice, and a deep, dark secret. Interviews with family and friends provided a growing sense of Johnathan's last days. They spoke of phone calls that went unanswered, fleeting mentions of meetings that seemed unusual, and an uncharacteristic nervousness that he had displayed. Investigators began to piece together a timeline, tracking Johnathan's movements through security footage, witness statements, and digital traces. Slowly, a disturbing picture began to emerge, a man caught in circumstances that were far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The gruesome discovery of Johnathan Willette's body marked a turning point in the case. What began as a mysterious disappearance had now become a full-blown homicide investigation. Detectives knew they were dealing with someone who not only took a life, but did so in a way that was calculated and chilling. The town, once quiet and unassuming, was now gripped by fear and fascination as residents grappled with the realization that true evil had walked among them. And yet, even amid the horror and shock, the darkest truths had not yet come to light. The scene of Johnathan's death, as gruesome as it was, would only hint at the complex and secretive life he had led. The evidence would point to betrayals, hidden relationships, and motives that no one could have foreseen. The discovery was not just the end of a man's life, it was the beginning of unraveling a secret that would shock everyone who thought they knew him. As investigators delved deeper into Johnathan Willette's life, they began to uncover details that painted a startlingly different picture from the one his family, friends, and neighbors had known. the man they thought they understood, the quiet accountant who kept to himself, the neighbor who waved politely from his driveway, had a side of his life that he had meticulously hidden. Secrets carefully guarded and hidden beneath layers of routine and normalcy were beginning to surface, and with them came more questions than answers. The first clues came from his digital footprint. Text messages recovered from his phone revealed conversations with individuals unknown to those closest to him. Emails suggested meetings and transactions that had never been mentioned. Investigators found bank statements showing unexplained withdrawals and payments that did not fit the narrative of his ordinary life. Each discovery chipped away at the image of the man everyone thought they knew. Who were these people he was communicating with, and why had he concealed these relationships so carefully? Interviews with colleagues and friends added layers of complexity. Some described Johnathan as withdrawn, secretive, and increasingly tense in the months leading up to his death. One coworker mentioned that he had become unusually focused on personal matters, sometimes staying late at the office, sometimes leaving abruptly without explanation. Friends recalled vague mentions of complications in his life, though he never elaborated. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. Johnathan's life was not the ordinary, peaceful existence everyone assumed. It was a life marked by hidden connections, unresolved conflicts, and shadows of danger lurking just beneath the surface. Investigators also discovered that Johnathan had cultivated relationships with individuals who operated on the fringes of legality. Some connections hinted at involvement in secretive business dealings, while others suggested personal entanglements that could easily turn volatile. There were hints of clandestine meetings, late-night phone calls, and encounters in locations far from his suburban home. Each revelation only deepened the mystery. What exactly had Johnathan been involved in, and who might have had a motive to harm him? Family members were shocked and bewildered as these hidden aspects of his life came to light. Parents, siblings, and close friends struggled to reconcile the image of the man they loved with the secrets being revealed. Emotional interviews captured the sense of betrayal and confusion they felt. "I never knew," one family member whispered, tears brimming. "He never told us any of this. How could he hide so much?" The answers were not immediately clear, but the evidence suggested that Johnathan had been living a double life, a life that, tragically, had placed him in mortal danger. As detectives pieced together the timeline of his final days, they began to see how these hidden aspects of his life might connect to his murder. The meetings he had concealed, the people he had interacted with secretly, and the financial irregularities all pointed towards potential motives. Each discovery, while shocking in its own right, also served as a crucial puzzle piece in understanding the circumstances that led to his death. The uncovering of Johnathan Willette's secret life also shed light on the complexity of human relationships and the dangers of deception. It revealed how a person could maintain a public facade of normalcy while navigating hidden conflicts, risky associations, and unresolved disputes. For investigators, this was both a challenge and a guide. Every secret he had kept was a potential key to finding the truth, but each revelation also revealed the depth of betrayal and the tangled web of connections surrounding his life and death.
By the time the full extent of Jonathan's hidden life was revealed, the investigation had taken on a new dimension. This was no longer just a case of a missing man or a simple homicide. It had become a story of intrigue, betrayal, and human complexity. The secrets Johnathan had carried were not merely personal, they were the very elements that had led to his murder. And as the investigation continued, it became painfully clear that to understand the crime, investigators would have to navigate the labyrinth of deception, danger, and hidden lives that Johnathan Willette had left behind. As the shocking details of Johnathan Willette's secret life began to emerge, the investigation intensified. Detectives knew they were no longer dealing with a simple disappearance or a random act of violence. Every lead had to be meticulously examined, every connection explored, and every potential suspect scrutinized. The town that had once been quiet and unassuming was now gripped by fear and speculation, as neighbors, co-workers, and friends wondered who among them could have committed such a horrifying act. The investigation began with the basics: interviews.
Detectives returned to those closest to Johnathan, family, friends, and colleagues, questioning them for hours on end. Each conversation was painstakingly detailed as officers sought to understand not only who Johnathan had interacted with in his final days, but also what kind of person he had been and what kind of threats or tensions might have existed in his life. Small inconsistencies in stories were carefully noted. Slight hesitations, nervous glances, or contradictions became critical pieces of the puzzle. Surveillance footage became one of the investigation's key tools. Cameras from local stores, traffic intersections, and nearby streets were combed through frame by frame. Investigators searched for any sign of unusual activity, vehicles, unknown individuals, or suspicious behavior that could indicate the perpetrator's movements. The footage revealed fleeting glimpses of people and places that initially seemed irrelevant, but under closer scrutiny, each moment became a potential clue. As forensic analysis progressed, the focus shifted to physical evidence. Clothing fibers, fingerprints, and DNA samples collected from the crime scene were cross-referenced against national databases. Every trace, no matter minor, had the potential to identify a suspect or narrow down the list of possible perpetrators. Investigators also analyzed Johnathan's personal spaces, his home, office, and digital devices to uncover hidden communications, deleted messages, and other secrets that could point towards someone with motive and opportunity. Suspects began to emerge as detectives pieced together the timeline and connections from Johnathan's life. Some were individuals he had interacted with in secret business dealings. Others were tied to personal relationships he had concealed from friends and family. Each suspect brought their own potential motive: jealousy, financial gain, revenge, or betrayal. Investigators carefully weighed each possibility, understanding that even the most ordinary-looking individual could harbor a dangerous intent. Interrogations became intense. Suspects were brought in one by one, questioned relentlessly, their alibis cross-checked against witness statements, surveillance footage, and digital evidence. Some cracked under pressure, revealing inconsistencies that led to new lines of inquiry. Others remained composed, their composure only heightening the tension and suspicion surrounding them. Detectives had to rely not only on facts, but also on intuition, experience, and careful observation to determine who was telling the truth and who was hiding something. The investigation also uncovered a tangled web of relationships, friendships, business partnerships, and secret associations that Johnathan had maintained in the shadows all became potential leads. Detectives realized that the crime was not the act of a lone individual. It might have involved collaboration, manipulation, or hidden networks that few could have anticipated. Every discovery complicated the case further, highlighting the dangerous intersections of trust, deception, and human ambition. Throughout this period, the emotional toll on Johnathan's family and the community was immense. Daily updates, press coverage, and the constant presence of law enforcement created an atmosphere of anxiety and dread. Forensic breakthroughs and investigative leads offered hope, but each development also reminded everyone of the grim reality. Johnathan Willette's life had been taken, and the process of finding justice would be long and harrowing. As the weeks passed, detectives began to narrow their focus. They identified key suspects whose actions, motives, and access aligned with the evidence collected. Yet even with promising leads, uncertainty lingered. Every suspect had a story, every alibi had a potential flaw, and every connection raised new questions. The investigation had become a high-stakes puzzle where one wrong move could allow a murderer to remain free and untouchable. The relentless pursuit of the truth eventually led to breakthroughs that would change the course of the case. Forensic evidence, digital traces, and careful detective work converged, pointing toward the individual or individuals responsible for Johnathan Willette's death. But even as names were identified and leads solidified, the investigation revealed the broader context of betrayal, secrecy, and danger that had shaped the circumstances of his murder. In the end, the investigation and the process of identifying suspects highlighted a stark reality. The truth about Johnathan Willette's death was buried not only in physical evidence, but also in the complexities of human relationships, hidden motives, and the dark consequences of secrets left unchecked. The pursuit of justice, painstaking and methodical, had only begun, and every step brought investigators closer to unraveling the full story of how this seemingly ordinary man met such a tragic and violent end.
After weeks of tireless investigation, the painstaking work of detectives finally began to pay off. Clues, carefully collected and analyzed, started to converge, pointing toward an individual whose connections to Johnathan Willette's secret life could no longer be ignored. The arrest that followed was both shocking and inevitable, a culmination of evidence that had been carefully pieced together, linking motive, opportunity, and intent in a way that left little room for doubt. The suspect, when taken into custody, was calm, almost eerily composed, a stark contrast to the gravity of the crime that had shaken the entire town. Law enforcement officials remained tight-lipped, refusing to confirm the suspect's identity immediately, but the community buzzed with speculation. Neighbors, co-workers, and friends watched in disbelief as someone who had been so close, so seemingly ordinary, was revealed to have played a central role in the murder. The arrest alone sent ripples of shock through the town, highlighting just how hidden and dangerous the web surrounding Johnathan's life had been. Once in custody, the suspect faced a series of interrogations. Detectives meticulously presented the evidence: digital communications, financial records, witness statements, and forensic findings. Each revelation was met with denials, half-truths, and, at times, moments of silence that spoke louder than words. The investigation had transformed into a psychological battle, one where the truth had to be extracted not just from facts, but from the cracks in a carefully constructed facade. As the case moved toward trial, the courtroom became the stage for a drama that had gripped the entire community. Prosecutors laid out a meticulously detailed account of the events leading to Johnathan Willette's murder, painting a picture of betrayal, secrecy, and premeditation. They presented evidence of financial manipulations, secret relationships, and the deliberate actions that culminated in the fatal act. Each piece of evidence was designed to reconstruct the final days of Johnathan's life, to expose the hidden threats that had lurked behind a facade of normalcy. The defense, however, countered with a narrative of uncertainty. They questioned the reliability of witness statements, challenged the interpretation of digital evidence, and argued that circumstantial elements could not definitively prove guilt. Every testimony, every forensic report, every piece of evidence was dissected, examined, and contested in a tense and emotional courtroom atmosphere. The proceedings were long, grueling, and at times emotionally overwhelming, not just for the families involved, but for the community that had been following the case with bated breath. Meanwhile, Johnathan's family struggled to reconcile the legal process with their own grief. Emotions ran high as they listened to accounts of his final days, the secrets he had kept, and the tragic circumstances of his death. Friends and loved ones recounted memories of a man who had been kind, intelligent, and generous, a life extinguished too soon by forces that had been hidden in the shadows. Their pain and heartbreak were palpable, a human element that underscored the gravity of the crime and the profound loss suffered by those who knew him. The trial ultimately concluded with a verdict that reflected the weight of the evidence and the meticulous work of investigators. Justice, as painstaking as it had been to achieve, was served in the courtroom. The perpetrator was convicted, the sentence pronounced, and the community breathed a collective sigh of relief, even as the echoes of tragedy lingered. For some, the resolution offered closure. For others, it raised further questions about human nature, secrecy, and the dangers that can lie hidden in the lives of those we think we know. Beyond the courtroom, the impact of Johnathan Willette's murder continued to resonate. The case became a cautionary tale about trust, deception, and the consequences of hidden lives. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues reflected on the signs they had missed, the secrets that had gone unnoticed, and the vulnerability that even seemingly ordinary individuals can face. Local authorities used the case to emphasize the importance of vigilance, communication, and the critical role of community in identifying and preventing potential threats. Ultimately, the story of Johnathan Willette was more than a crime report. It was a narrative of human complexity, a chilling reminder of the dangers of secrets, and a testament to the tireless efforts of investigators who refused to let a life disappear without explanation.